Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Hero Podcast 64. My name is Ryan G. with my co-host, the real Pete Kirkwood. Pete, what's our topic?
Well, today we've gone the full cycle. We've completed the entire hero's journey. We've gone around that entire spiral concept. And I thought, let's do a few different episodes just on different subjects and stuff like that from a hero's perspective. And as I've got an event coming up this weekend, what are we now? For me, it's Friday afternoon, and I'll be doing the event midday Sunday. That'll be Saturday evening for a lot of people in America. Remember your time zones around the world. New Zealand's leading the curve. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about negotiating like a hero, because it's not about getting a better deal in your transaction. Nah, bro. That's so minor, right? It's not about bartering $5 off that price with the shopkeep. That's not what we're talking about. You've really got to be managing a bigger picture. You've got to be negotiating on behalf of the storyline, on behalf of the entire Odyssey, on behalf of the entire epic. Because if you're the hero, and if you're not the hero of your own story, like I'm not sure why you are listening to my stuff, unless that's what you aim to be. So there you go. This is what you want to be doing anyway, right? I've come to realize that I do only speak to the right people who want to listen. If you can't start using your imagination to frame yourself in a bigger perspective, I'm not for you. And that ability to negotiate, right there, I negotiated with my audience, specifically telling them where they were on this transaction with me, right? I'm providing something, I'm sharing something that's coming at a certain frequency, and there's a certain energy that's going to receive it. Not everybody, because if I brought every single person along on this ride, it would be way too crowded. I don't have time for that. And I need to negotiate the terms of my life with the world in a way that filters into all the relationships around me. Not, hey, can we haggle over how much this thing's going to be worth with the shopkeep, right? People think of the art of negotiation as such a minor thing. So let's negotiate like a hero. I'm going to cover negotiate like a boss in my event, because that is a little bit of a more applicable perspective in a modern day life than a hero. A hero is a little bit more romantic, but both are quite valid. And it's fascinating because the hero is very idealistic often in his negotiation. You know, he's thinking of the greater good. He's thinking of the bigger picture in a sense. He's seeing the best in people, and he's treating them often as their best self. And this is one of the hero's greater qualities, is that he can inspire heroism in others by projecting his heroic perspective onto his interactions with other people. That's part of how he negotiates his life. He becomes an inspirational leader and an inspirational character. Does that make sense to you, brother?
Yes. I can see it. Now, the way I see it is, yes, the hero is an inspiration. And when we talk about the idea of a hero, we're technically speaking of an ideal. Someone who takes a bigger picture into account when they negotiate. Now, in reality, negotiation, let's look at business, or not even business, let's look at the workplace. If I'm an employee, I rarely take the bigger picture into account when it comes to, let's say, the company or society. When I am negotiating, it's usually for me or my team or one of my team members, because I want them to have a better life experience. So let's face it, more time, more money, more energy, anything more of a resource. It's a boon to whatever adventure you're on. If you're the hero, let's say, and we're in a fantasy world, if I have more time to set up traps for whatever monsters, more time to sharpen my blade, more money to ensure my safety, the safety of my companions, or not even the safety, but also the guarantee a good night's sleep,
Yeah.
a warm bed,
Yeah.
some good food. That goes a long way after you've been weathered, beaten, brutalized by monsters, elements, the locals, who knows? Money goes a long way. And if I have a chance as a hero to even get 1 cent more, well, I take it.
You would. I know you would. You're that kind of hero, brother.
Yeah, fuck yeah, I would. I'd even try to get
Exactly.
2 cents more. Yeah.
The
And,
whole
and
dollar,
here,
brother. The whole dollar.
the whole dollar. But then you have the other side of the argument because who's paying? Who's paying? Who is
Oh,
being
exactly.
held
And
responsible for giving me that money? Because if you can imagine, just like in RPG worlds or fantasy worlds, there has to be a a quest from a party, from a village, from a company, from a manager. A position is open to get some sort of job done, be it data analytics, be it real estate, be it mowing the fucking lawn. Who knows? Well, you know because you read the vacancy. Um, and if we can negotiate a better salary, a better fee, a better commission,
mm,
are we truly being heroic? I say yes, because in and of itself, the negotiation is a confrontation. And last time I checked, heroes are built for confrontations. And as I am building my business and getting clients bit by bit, the more I start to realize how important it is to, should I take a fee? The fee should be paid upfront.
yep. Makes
Or,
things way simpler.
which is way simpler,
At
is
least
a lot
clearly
less.
established.
Yeah, yeah. Alternatively, a, what's it called in English again? An insurance could be paid. Like you pay me half now, then half later. Easy as that. Meaning, through the half that's being paid, I now have your trust that you will pay the rest because you have felt pain. If there isn't an emotional investment, it's very hard to negotiate either collateral or anything else. I believe, and I'm not completely sure if that's true, a contract is only valid if there has been made a transaction.
Mhm.
Last time I checked. So even if a transaction is 1 cent, even if your fee is 1 cent, get paid upfront, preferably. Now, if, of course, depending on the situation, if the client is a retention client, you could play around a bit more. There's already an established contract. You already have experience with the client. There's already a trust built. It's the same thing with dancing, if you look at it. The
With
moment you
dancing?
research your, yeah, because let's say Latin dancing or ballroom dancing, you give an offer,
Yeah.
and it's up to the client whether they accept the offer or not. Should they accept, fantastic, we go have fun. My duty as the man that dances is to keep frame when we dance, to give the woman the opportunity to show off her beautiful body, her beautiful dress, etc. That's what I'm there for. I'm there as a frame that holds up the picture. It holds up the art, that holds up the painting. And
And
that's
that's a
selling.
valuable place to negotiate from.
Exactly. And then you have, when you negotiate, just like what you said, know thy value by first knowing thyself. If you have a clear understanding of the problem that the client is facing, you can understand where the client is coming from and then play to your strengths.
Absolutely.
To give an example, me as a data analyst, I know the client needs to have certain insights in their process. If it's a marketing process, they need to know, let's say, the click rate. They need to know the visits, the amount of visits per channel. They need to know, is my marketing campaign working, yes or no? They need to have seen, have references that the moment that I come in as the X factor, that not only will their project succeed better, but I can guarantee that they will have more grip on not only their projects, not only their work, but also their life. Because at the end of the day, a hero is there to change lives in business, in their personal lives, in whatever area. Because in the end of the day, being a hero is very heavily dependent on character. Daredevil and Spider-Man, very similar heroes, very similar acrobatics, you name it. But clearly, one is Spider-Man and one is Daredevil. Same thing with the villains. You have Kingpin and Lex Luthor, very similar characters, very similar villains, but totally different characters, totally different obsessions and manners of being. I can see. Let's take the villains, Lex Luthor and Kingpin. I forget his original name, but you get the point. They will negotiate a good fucking deal.
Well, they are businessmen, right? Like they are both that archetype. Yes, precisely.
And I can't help but think they will get the better end of the deal no matter what. But they would go about it in slightly different ways. I can almost feel a nuance in the way that they present themselves and thus become to the following. As a hero, you not only need to be presentable when negotiating, you need to represent yourself well.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
Want to talk about that, Pete?
Yes, because it's not just that it's not just that negotiation. You need to have the ability to look at the whole timeline of the past, the present, and the future. So it's quite easy to negotiate in the present moment with most transactions, right? Like at the supermarket, there's a price on it. You go to the counter, you buy it, you walk out. It's like so easy. Some other retailers, you're like, well, I've been a loyal customer, you know, what about a discount? There's a past history.
Right.
But to look at the future, when you're making that calculation, you go, well, what will this yield me in the future to make this negotiation today? And for example, I've done a business deal with someone where I said, look, you can just owe me a few favors. And they were like, okay. And I was like, don't worry about it. Because I know in 10 years, they'll still remember that they owe me a few favors. And I know in 10 years where they will be. Because I know how to place my bet on my people. And I know how to negotiate like a boss. Now, a hero is normally just focused on the campaign or the story or the mission. As a boss is focused on the entire empire, the entire life. That's where this event's going, right? It's going to get into the very specific ways that you communicate with people in a way that you get what you want because people want to give it to you because you negotiate with them so well. So that's where that comes from. The hero does have that in a certain way. However, it's usually centered around a theme for a hero, right? So like there's a big boss that needs to be defeated, like a big bad enemy.
Yeah,
And you've got to go through a certain thing where you don't have to be nice to these people, because the fact that they're having their children like kidnapped, or they're being completely taxed into the ground, or they're being exploited and victimized by a higher power, and you're freeing them from that. If you kind of speak to them in a rude way, where they're not going to have you around for dinner in the future, it doesn't matter. They're still going to help you in the moment because you're saving their life. You're the
true.
hero. You can sort of actually get away with being a little bit of a larger than life, bit of a rough character, and you get like almost plot armor around you, right? Because you're doing such a good holy crusade, a lot of your things will be passed over as good. In the real world, that's harder to replicate. It's not impossible, but it's much harder to replicate that, and you have to work like a boss. I
Yep.
think
That's a very good point. Work like a boss to negotiate like a boss. Everything comes from the frame of being your own boss. Even if currently you're working as an employee, one of the most important lessons I've managed to learn is know your place. And I don't mean this in, let's say, and let's say a derogatory way. I truly mean understand how you as the clock fit in the machine. Because if you
yes.
can truly pinpoint that, you now have the starting point of any negotiation, be it informal or formal, be it for any meeting, be it for any new business deal, new project, whatever. And it's in that we start to see a very clear theme. Intention is the starting point of results. What is your intention when you go negotiate?
You make a very good point there, because it calls to mind two great examples I have of when I did it. One when I did it as a hero, and one when I did it as a boss.
Fair enough.
Now, you also mentioned about standing up as an employee, because standing up as an employee is not easy to do, but well, the right thing to do. And it is the trait of a hero or a leader or something like that, to stand up when you're an employee and say something, or do
Oh,
get paid and you're told. So one time when I stood up like a hero was when I worked for a large company in insurance, and I was just a salesman. There were like 120 salespeople. And then there's all the other departments and everything else. And they were doing some, and they were getting consultations from everybody involved. And I stuck my hand up and said, look, I'll get involved in that. I'm happy to put some of my time and day into working on a project with a bunch of people in the company to try and make this place work better for everyone involved and the staff here. I want to give back to the community, and I want to do it for the people around. And I stood up like a hero. Now, there was another circumstance where I was working in a company where I was relatively new, and I was learning the ropes, and I had quite a bit of leash. Position and everything, and I could have quite easily taken my liberties. Instead, I doubled down and I worked my ass off, and I worked to prove to people that I was prepared to get to the top of the sales board, and I aimed to take over the company, to play the pieces on a chessboard like a boss. I stepped up further than an employee normally would, but I did it to take over the company as a boss, versus when I stepped up for the people I was working with to help them out. One was heroic, one was like a boss. Both times I got the result, right? Like a boss, I ended up being promoted into management and getting my hands on how to steer that company. I did a lot with it. That was a multi-million-dollar finance company. People know that story. Some don't, whatever. The other side, when I worked for a large insurance company, what I ended up working on was leave. So how employees would interact with the company with regards to getting sick leave, annual leave, all sorts of leave and things approved, applying for it, all that kind of stuff. And I ended up being the most junior, smallest voice in the entire work group. So here's the one little guy who's a sales guy, and here's all these big corporate, like other people from heads of departments and stuff, and I'm just a sales guy. And I was like, nah, man, I'm sticking my hand up because I represent the little man. And I literally knew, I'm like, there's 120 people standing behind me. I have something important to say. And they were all like, we have to give it to this guy because that I didn't, what did I know about that kind of stuff at that point in my career? I didn't know a lot about it, but I knew what it was like to be an employee who was sick and was trying to tell somebody. And I knew what it was like to be an employee who was pretending to be sick and trying to get off. And I knew what it was like
Don't we
to
all?
be, don't we all, right? And I knew what it was like to be trying to get your leave well in advance and also trying to get it at the last minute. Like, and I knew all these things, right? I was like, right, like I've done that. So I can represent my people. And there were quite a few times when I was like, well, hang on, that process is not going to work. People are going to come, they're going to clash there and they're going to go around it. It's going to create all sorts of bullshit and that's not going to work. You have to change that system. And we changed a few things in that process and I remember contributing to it. And that earned me almost like a massive amount of respect in the workplace. Everyone was like, damn, man, he went up there and fought for us and got better shit. Because it kind of got out how much of an effort I'd made and people really took notice. And I
Rarely do you
became a
talk
bit more of a
about
hero.
the effects of negotiating well, not relating to the
Exactly.
hero. Because obviously, after negotiation is done, I've never realized how me, let's say getting more money, affects the rest. I might inspire people to get better salaries. I might negotiate on behalf of a team to get better salaries. Who knows? I've never realized that. Continue, Pete. Thank you.
Well, it was really interesting because I'm often the kind of guy who, like, you know, things like justice and stuff come to me. I do like standing up for what is right. And when I acted like a hero in that scenario, the more I think about it now, with all the knowledge and wisdom I have, I saw how I got a whole hero's journey out of it. And I even got my I hadn't yet learned the social skills with women to claim that reward, but and I dropped the ball on her, but she was gorgeous. But she didn't notice me the same way until after that happened. Now
Of
I've
course.
gone through in my mind, I'm like, I see, you know, that's when things started happening and it created a change. But that's one, well, actually, you know, then I think of other examples where it's so funny. You always think of the bad before you remember the good. And then you think, no, it wasn't all that bad because there was. But the point is that before I end up in a fucking, what is it called? A victory lap. When you negotiate from that perspective of doing the right thing, you actually end up, it's almost like you become a representative cause or an idea, and you negotiate from so much more of a powerful position than yourself, because it's very hard to argue with the truth, right? I'm like, look, if we put all this stuff over here, it's going to be in the shade when the sun rises, and it's going to be wet. We need it to be dry, and the sun rises on it in the morning. It needs to go over there. I could be the most junior person out of 100 people who are on authority right there. Unless someone's ego is going to get in the way, they're going to have to be like, well, the sun is going to rise there, not there, and it does need to be dry, not wet. So he is right. It's true. I'm negotiating from such a powerful position because I've got the truth behind me in that instance that it doesn't matter. And when you're being a hero, you're fighting from that perspective of what is right and honorable and just. And you so often have so much more power to negotiate with than just Joe Blogs.
I agree.
You follow my drift?
I agree. And that's how I got fired from my first job.
We've definitely got time for this story. All right, tell us this one.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. where do I start? So, like most data analysts, BI professionals, business intelligence professionals, it's a smart idea to start with clients you will work for in the future. And I decided to work for a bank because I figured if I can handle that, I can handle more exciting companies. Now, when I started that first job, it was immediately evident that the manager didn't really know what my role entailed.
Oh,
And that should have been a dead giveaway. When I started asking for more training, more coaching, etc., because I'm a starter, I'm junior in my function, I didn't necessarily complain, but I definitely brought to his attention, like, we need to have this fixed.
yep.
And I was getting other people involved because I saw that they wanted it too. And that's plenty enough reason to say, okay, there's a clear one. Let's do something with this. Now, I went about it probably the wrong way because I'm a very social type and I tend to talk a bit too much, especially back in that time period. And when I look back, I can clearly see politics starting to play a role in it because I started to speak with the director of the bank, and for some reason,
Yeah.
every Friday I would be invited into his office and just talk about a few topics like money, traveling, and bitches. For some reason, this old 60-year-old man loved talking about those three topics, and I just happened to be there and to be invited in his office and just drink coffee with the old man. And this is one of the things that came up where I talked with my team and the extending IT team, and this is a clear topic that came up, so I was just curious. So I can imagine what happened when I negotiated both for better salary and um, more coaching, that I was given my 2 months notice to get a new job. And I could see as soon as I look in his eyes, my manager, where he was doing this very deliberate, as if he was trying to get rid of me.
Yep. Threatened him.
And I didn't realize that until later. And I was almost offended because I thought I was doing a pretty good job.
You were. You were doing a better job than him. That's the problem.
I was really flipping out, really flipping out. Afterwards, I made myself look a bit put myself in a bit of a bad light by talking too much. And maybe that's the lesson that I learned from it. Don't talk too much. I'm not saying stick to your business, but I am saying there's a time and a place. I
Yeah.
completely forgot my place in the company when speaking to a
Yeah.
director, simply because we had a good connection.
Well, the interesting thing is, you probably could have negotiated around your manager through the director with the connections if you had have had the social awareness, the social
Yeah.
nous to realize what a kind of a threat you were. You know, on one of those Friday afternoons to say, hey, look, boss, I've got to be honest with you, you know, I really want to do something for this company, but I can see that some of the managers and things are starting to look at me as a threat and they're going to make sure I'm gone, right? But I know that you know who I am and I know who you are, and
Yeah.
that's, man, that takes some balls, but that's the way to navigate that minefield for anybody listening as well, because I've been
Yeah.
in a similar situation.
And negotiating when you when the other party has malice, that's
Mm,
a rough position to be in because they have what you need. And that is not an okay position to be in. That's that's an awful win-lose situation because he's trying to get rid of you. And I was looking towards that negotiation. I should have seen it coming because he was acting like a quote unquote bitch towards me and
Yeah.
being very deliberate about certain things. And I was like, why are you acting like this? This is very strange, very peculiar. A simple instance, I have a tendency to be very fashionable for an IT guy, very well put together, very well dressed. Even if I'm wearing
Mm,
casual clothes, everything
mm.
needs to match well for the weather, for the mood, for the setting. I like doing that. I have it down to a T. I can have a suit together in 5 minutes. It's not that hard. So I went to the party and you have, and I'm not sure who has history with who. The fuck, I'm barely there for a half a year. And I, of course, if someone's going to flirt with me, I'm just going to flirt back. How was I supposed to know that some of the women had history with the manager? How am I supposed to know? And this did not happen once with not even within that company, but also within other companies. How am I supposed to know?
Well,
And
you have to play the game.
yeah, you have to play the game. You have to play the game. Um, and
Like, let me just talk on that for a second. Okay, go on, go for it.
funny enough, years later, with another company, we this was a startup. We were negotiating because we were scaling up. We were negotiating codes of conduct because apparently I was being labeled as one of the bigger flirts. Obviously. Um, Me and my manager, which is funny because we're completely different people, were labeled as bigger flirts, and we were kind of quote unquote on hot coals because of it. And I almost laughed in the situation because we're a fucking startup. If you want to be better, it should come from the leaders because that's my opinion. But I
Yeah,
realized that's not the situation to negotiate. And then it comes to the following about know in what position you are in to even be able to negotiate. So should you want to be able to negotiate, you should create the conditions for said negotiation. A simple example would be if you've worked for a company for at least a year and you've delivered good results, it's decent grounds for negotiation. Now, like every spell, you should sweeten the deal.
yep.
What can you do to sweeten the deal? Do you have certificates? Do you understand the position the company is in? Do you have other deals open? And how badly do people want you in the company? What is your position of power within the company? If you are the only one that knows how to get the data in the company, you're very powerful. You can still be
Exactly.
replaced.
Can't be replicated.
Exactly. So know thy worth. Know thy worth. Know thy worth. And keep understanding that the better quality a hero you are, not just in character, but also in skill and the value that you deliver, the better deals you can make. At the end of the day, life is about making deals, regardless of
It
the
is.
context, be it with your parents, be it whether you're going to uh, the grocery store, because you're agreeing to a price as the consumer. And it's the same way around. So if a supermarket can do that, why can't you not simply give an offer? Take it or leave it. This is my fee. If you're not interested, I'll see you when I see you. And that's a hard bargain. Pete, you were going
Well,
to say
there's an
something.
interesting
Yeah.
yeah, it's it's like it's about like setting a boundaries and setting a standard, right? You know, you're
Yeah.
setting your price, knowing your worth.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things you've sort of spoken on are things which I think will be relevant and they'll resonate with a lot of people who've been employees and they've been through that grinder, right? Because we've all been through that. Well, not all of us. Most of us have been through that company thing. We're like, oh yeah, okay, this is what it's like being an employee. But what happens is that it's like you say, a lot of those people with those qualities, they stand up and they get spat out of that machine and they go, well, fuck you, I'm going to work for myself. And you get these badass lone wolf types, you know, that are often very specialized in their thing.
Yeah.
Now, just a little bit like this, we're on probably for time about now, but
Ish. Yeah.
networking and negotiating with those badass, powerful lone wolf individuals and forming them into groups and companies and structures that are built from the toughest and the best people. Now,
Yeah.
that is negotiating like a boss because we're building companies and structures that are coming for these weak ass, bitch sheep food slaughterhouses of corporations. Like they're weak, they're soft. You know, you could build a better business. It's just that they currently have a monopoly and they're currently holding all the leveraging strings of power. You can do it better, it's better. So when you build out of better people with better skills, some of the stuff that you can start networking together is very, very impressive. And that's what I want to teach, right? I don't want to be the only person doing this. If I have this skill, I want to propagate it out there. And I know you've already got a ticket to my event. So I know
Good.
I'm not selling you.
You don't
But
have to sell me shit, man. The fact that you can help people, assuming they have the appropriate skill, of course, earn 5 figures at least at the bare minimum, and you have a history with that, that's amazing.
yeah,
I mean, I've some history with that, but I haven't been able to produce it consistently because I work from the data side of things and the removal of constraint side of things. But to actually be able to set up a system is very different to actually improving a system. They're two different worlds.
very much so. And to work with people on an individual level and on a system level, right? I can do both. I can manage the individual and their skills, and I can manage the group as well. And I'm just starting to learn the extent of what I can do and teach on it because it's so powerful to help people get their communication organized and efficient and working together. Because when people become focused and they manifest what they really want, today I've literally watched one of my clients has pulled in. He pulled in 3.5 grand before lunch, and then upped it to 5 uh, before the end of the day, and that was just negotiating based on his position. That he didn't provide anything across the table for that negotiation. It was just, well, this should be like this should be like this, and da 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 da. It's very skilled, but like that's getting into somebody else's story. But the point
Uh,
is that when you start learning the tricks and techniques and real deep principles behind the art of negotiation and frame control and how it all combines together, using a whole bunch of AZD tech, once you start getting these results and you start working with them, I got abundance right now. I got things that it's like, oh, I could have that, but nah. And here's the other thing: a lot of idiots would take it. A lot of idiots would take what's presented around me in my life right now because it looks like the Garden of Eden, but I know there's a couple of fucking snakes behind some of those apples that you wouldn't know unless you fucking know and you're a boss. So before I go on forever and this podcast becomes an hour, that's me, brother. If people are interested in my event, reach out. I haven't had a chance to DM everybody. I've been so busy
of course.
working my ass off, putting together and a whole bunch of other shit. So reach out to me, anyone who's keen. I know you're sorted. A whole bunch of other people are sorted, but there's still some spots left. So
Fantastic. Fantastic. Now, the biggest takeaway of this is know your worth, know your position, and know how getting more resources will help you, your family, your team, your company, and whatever. Take pride in being able to negotiate and create the conditions for better negotiations so that you can get the results that you can. And should you be interested in negotiating better, negotiating like a boss, DM me or contact the real Pete Kirkwood directly. This has been the Hero Podcast 64. My name is Ryan G with my co-host, the real Pete Kirkwood. May your life never be the same and may you negotiate for every penny that you're worth. Good night, good morning, good evening.